It's Spoilerin time. We're going to spoil The Shield, Game of Thrones finale, and Orange is the New Black, episode 1 of season 3. Brian Brushwood, are you ready? Are you prepared?
I'm ready for one thing, sir, and that's for us to check in on the summer movie draft.
Brian's all over. Team Cordkillers, Christy Cates, and Malango have put it away. They've won. Record-breaking Jurassic World, $204 million. Just let's all go home.
Dude, I've already told you from the beginning. Cordkillers, you and me, our team has this locked up. Now, granted, you and me aren't on our team.
Just draft onto their tail now.
Yeah.
Oh, we're Cordkillers.
I mean, look, we hand-selected the best in the biz in order to represent our show, right? I'm proud that our show is going to be the winner of the movie draft. Although, I'll tell you what, man, it's a double whammy here. So Jurassic World opens to $210 million. You figure they're going to about double that in the domestic run, so we'll be close to $500 million, which, by the way, Amtrekker right now is at $540 million in first place still, with but we've all agreed that he's got nothing left in the tank. The fact that Jurassic World is likely going to bust a $500 million, and then on top of that they have Minions, I'm going to call them 750, 800 million, and I'm going to proclaim them my odds-on favorite to be the winner right now.
Yeah, without Minions, they would probably catch Amtrekker because Team Amtrekker doesn't have anything left.
Yeah.
Although Spy might bring in another 30 million or so it'd be tough. But the fact that they have Minions means, yes, they are definitely in the hunt now for the title.
Yeah, right now, after a disappointing launch of Tomorrowland, the next thing Team Night Attack has to look forward to is Inside Out. Even if Inside Out outperforms all of the other Pixar movies possibly combined, then we really don't seem to have much of a chance since we're sitting at
well, you also have Trainwreck.
Sure, it's going to go great. It won't be a train wreck. It's going to be a huge success.
Team DTNS is back in last place.
Oh, dude, and you have to be loving this, given the fact that you were the odds-on favorite at the beginning. Like, if you do come back from behind, how epic is that going to be? To go from sitting at 120 million to sweeping up to 800 million to steal the prize, which I believe you can do.
I actually believe that Inside Out's going to do well for you. I think you're right, though. The problem is not Inside Out. The problem is that you just didn't get what you needed out of Tomorrowland or even Aloha.
I believe
I would have thought did better.
There were rumors that Tomorrowland lost $100 million. And, of course, that's all Hollywood stuff. I'm sure they'll make their money back in DVDs or whatever. But as far as, like, a box office release, they were expecting it to do at least $100 million better, which is whatever.
Well, and that $100 million showed up on Jurassic World, essentially, which did $8 million better than they expected in the opening weekend.
I wonder. I mean, that would make sense, though. If you're in the demo for Tomorrowland, and we're living in a progressively intellectually older children world, where it's like, if you had to ask anyone 4 weeks ago, are you gonna go see either Tomorrowland or Jurassic World? I mean, the answer's obvious, right? If you had to pick between the two, and they're close enough that I think a lot of people pick between the two.
Yeah. So as we mentioned, Inside Out coming out this weekend, and then in 2 weeks we get Max, the dog movie, which is a tearjerker, making everybody cry. Is he angry at all? What's that?
Is he angry?
Oh yeah, he's got post-traumatic stress disorder.
Oh, so he's mad.
So he's mad, and he jerks tears out of you.
Mad Max.
He's furious.
See, okay, I couldn't believe you weren't there for me. That was fantastical. I expected you to be there for that. That's amazing.
He's on the road. He's a warrior, Brian.
Sorry.
That was dumb. Hey, but also Ted 2's coming up. So there.
Right on, man. Hey, so what do you want to spoil first, sir?
Let's spoil Orange is the New Black, episode 1 of season 3, which, as I mentioned on the main show, I watched because it was Saturday morning. I just had a little time to kill, and I didn't want to watch Sense8 without Eileen. And so because I knew it had been out for a couple of days, and I just hadn't had a chance to get to it, I figured I'd dive in. And I'll be honest, I'm a fan. I enjoy the show, but this one, maybe it was because I just spent a lot of time working really hard, but it kind of made me tear up. I thought this is one of the most touching episodes they've done.
I'm sorry, Tom. I can't hear you because I'm doing this motion that I'm hoping they'll show on the video because I'm busy treading water. just like this episode of Orange is the New Black did for me. It just,
well, no, nothing moved forward in the story except a little bit with Red, I guess. But I didn't care. I loved seeing all the mother interactions with the daughters and all of those different takes on what motherhood means. And I love the fact that they didn't have just like one type of situation. They came up with so many different ways of treating that subject, and they didn't dwell on any single one of them.
On paper, everything you said is 100% right. And if I saw the script and the setting, I would say like, wow, that's great to tie it in with Mother's Day. And it's awesome that Piper was the smallest part of the episode. You know, her story about, you know, there was that brief moment, like, was she going to confess that she's the one who got, you know, what's her name in back in prison?
She was the only one who didn't get a mother story either, really, because we kind of already know it.
Yeah. And obvious, you know, the fact that, I mean, even without remembering the backstory to Red, watching that scene, it seemed insane that Red couldn't figure out that they clearly weren't open. The story didn't exist. And
I took that as denial, right? Which is her going like, no, I don't want to believe what is very obviously in front of me. And that's a typical reaction of people, especially in hard circumstances. They're like, I can't add this on top of what's going on.
Sure. Although it was significant that Red decided to seal up the portal, especially given the fact that Boo and what's her name are getting ready to unload all that heroin out there. Which, by the way, keep in mind, here's where I suspect that's headed. And I'm not going to look at Bryce, who's seen all this already. But if the tunnel shut down, number one, there's a conflict. There's like, we had a buyer and everything. And then at the end of the day, you're like, well, here we are with a lot of heroin, and we're in prison. Seems like having heroin in prison would be a very useful thing to do. And it's like,
what are we going to do with all this heroin in a prison, Brian?
Yeah, I know, right? So we're seeing foreshadowing of that. Alex,
and
that's
her
name.
wanting to go look at it and saying it's so pretty. Like, we're obviously setting up for a downfall story there as well.
Yeah, I think we're going to look at a relapse for that. I mean, it was adorable in some ways, but in general, I do kind of enjoy the weird blending of not Officer Mendez, he's porn stash. What's the baby daddy officer?
Right, that guy.
Yeah. Baby daddy officer, and what's her name?
If only I had the internet.
That's fine. Your spare brain is not available at the moment. Again, that's progressing slowly. I got to admit, I really dig. I really should learn all of their names. Bald Mustache's ascent to warden status and what that means. We have a new character who's
Caputo. He is Caputo.
Caputo, of course. Caputo.
I actually like Bald Mustache though.
Bald Mustache. What's funny is just to get in the mood.
You remembered Lushek's name earlier though, didn't you?
I did. I remember.
Oh, you did. Okay.
Yeah.
Never mind.
So I watched the whole previously on thing, and it just doubled down on me. Like there's no place for a cartoon. Yes, everything is exaggerated in this show. It is a fantasy. It is a projection. But I don't need to be reminded of that, obviously, with every scene that Pornstache is in. He is a cartoon. He's a character from Reno 911 that does not belong in the show. I don't believe him for a second. He shows up, might as well be wearing blackface, might as well be wearing a fat suit, might as well be a fake gay character or something. It's like he's so cartoony bad guy that it takes me out of the show, because there are a lot of believable moments in
You're talking about Mendez?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he wasn't in this episode.
He wasn't, but I saw him in the previously on, and the second he showed up, well, I mean, he was virtually in it, in that it set up the whole arc with he has rich parents, and there may be money, and we need to double down on this, and what's her name's mom?
You're talking about John Bennett, which is why you can't remember his name, because it's real normal.
Real boring.
He's the baby daddy.
Got it. So, I don't know. That's where I'm at. I mean, I'll keep going, but at this point, I don't know what I expect, because it's clear that there is no giant arc. There is no beginning, middle, and end. This isn't The Shield. This isn't The Wire. This isn't one person's story. This is a collage of little vignettes, and that's fine. But just knowing that we could be
like those kinds. I mean, that's kind of what Mad Men is too. And it doesn't seem like that sort of storytelling appeals to you.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's why I gave up on Mad Men. Once I figured out, like, oh, wait, nothing will ever be resolved.
Which is why Sense8 is so touch and go, because it's verging on that as well. That's one of its strengths. It's not its only strength, thankfully, for you.
I don't mind a collage of individual threads that all coalesce into one narrative, which is what we get from Game of Thrones, right? Because Game of Thrones is very much that. We have threads that have never touched each other yet, even on the television show. But we're waiting to all come together for this climactic ending.
Yeah, but Game of Thrones is not just a slice of life vignette, right? That's the biggest difference, I think.
Yeah.
It's not, that would be hilarious. I actually want to see Game of Thrones like re-edited to just be like, hey, it's just a collection of stories about people living in Westeros, you know? It's not an overarching plot here. You know, it's just what happens.
They're shooting stuff out of order, where it's like spoilers coming up. Game of Thrones people, Tyrion over, not in Westeros, like as if it was a previous life he lived, out across
before he
the narrow
moved.
sea.
It's interesting. And anyway, to bring it back to Orange is the New Black, the one scene that really stuck out for me, and in a way that I don't even think is necessarily bad, but it felt intentional in a way the rest of the scenes felt very natural, was when what's Taryn Manning's Tiffany Pennsatucky sitting there with the not toothpicks, popsicle sticks.
The popsicle sticks, and Boo sits down, and it took me out of it too. It felt very.
It really felt like not an advertisement, but a public service message was being delivered at that point.
I'll tell you what it felt like. It felt like one of the writers finally got around to reading Freakonomics and had her mind blown, and like that annoying freshman in college wanted to tell everyone about it. It's like, we read it 8 years ago.
There were a couple other places in this episode where a prisoner would drop a reference to something that you wouldn't expect, and I liked it. I was like, I like that, because that does happen where people you don't think would know about something are big fans of it, or, like that plays against their type. And that's cool because that makes it more real for me. This one really, it started that way. Like, have you ever read Freakonomics? I'm like, oh, Boo read Freakonomics. That's cool. And it's like, well, let me explain, let me give you the jacket cover pitch and then talk. It was like, okay, wow. Yeah, this just became a lesson. And like I said, I don't even think I necessarily think it's bad. It just felt different, and it stuck out from the rest of the episode.
To be fair, could it be that both you and I had the same reaction because we were so familiar with the source material?
Possibly.
Where it's like we kind of roll our eyes, where it's like, we all took, literature in this whatever age.
Yeah, and that may be all it is. I still feel like it was more explanation and setup than other things that I've heard where I also am familiar, but maybe not.
I suspect everything's going to descend into chaos as we would expect from this kind of show. But it was kind of nice to see for a brief moment everybody getting along, even begrudgingly between mothers and daughters and so on. I don't know. I'll watch, but I was not at all blown away by the first episode, and also I'm not surprised nor enthralled by Piper's weak nature, where she can't even own up to her mistake. She was weak to screw over. She was weak to bend Alex's will to begin with and lie on the stand. Then she was weak again to call Alex back so she would have her back and screw up Alex's life. And then she's weak a third time by not even having the ovaries to admit that she did all that. It's like I'm just done with Piper's weakness. I'm done.
There are weak people though.
I know, but they shouldn't be the main characters that I'm supposed to see the world through.
All right. Bryce, anything to add at the risk of spoiling this entire series for us because you finished it, based on what you've heard us say so far?
I think if you stick with it, I think some of the very specific complaints that you had, whether they are continuations of those complaints or if they are and opposite of that, I think you will see some of them addressed.
Who, Brian?
Yeah. Both of us, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just different, like you guys are touching on a lot of, it's really interesting that you guys are touching on very specific things that, having seen the whole series or the whole season, get addressed at some point in one way or another over the season.
Right. By the way, Jackie Aaron has a fantastic idea. Why don't we call this episode "Ovaries Are the New Testicles"?
All right. I skipped what would have been a beautiful transition into talking about Game of Thrones earlier. But now we're really going to talk about Game of Thrones, episode 10, season 5, the season finale, in which I've been kind of lying all season and saying we're past the books, even though we had little threads left to go. I don't think we even have any little threads left at this point.
Well,
and in fact, in a couple of storylines, we've charged well past anything that was in the books, including through a chapter that was only released on George R. R. Martin's website as a preview of the next book.
Yeah. So here's the weird part is there are things that all of a sudden I kind of regret playing coy about earlier when I feel like I could have talked about them for a long time. Warning, vague references that will only make sense to book readers to follow. But like I had Bonnie and I started talking last night, and I was like, I don't see a place for Lady Stoneheart in the rest of the TV show. I don't think she'll be there at all because they've done one season per book. There are 7 books in the series. We are now at season 5, caught up with book 5. I don't see any place to wedge that in that it won't seem cartoony and stupid. I think they're going to cut that entirely. Do you want to start at the big spoiler, or you want to talk little stuff first?
Well, let's. I don't know. Let's go right to the big spoiler. Why? Let's not avoid the dead Jon Snow in the room.
Oh my God! What? Dead Jon Snow? What? Yeah, man. Okay, so again, for those of you who haven't heard, spoiler alert: there were some books, and
yeah. Do you even need to say that?
I need to say it every single time that I don't get the letter. In the book, and tell me if you feel differently about this, Tom. In the books, there are a number of scenes where things look terrible for the protagonist. It's clear they're going to die or whatever. And we saw this with, for example, Brienne. Brienne, there's a scene where there's a knife at her neck and they're like, we're going to kill you now. And then she shouts a word and then cut to black or whatever. And then it turns out that the word saved her life and so on, right? In the book, it is very much out of nowhere that he's sneak attacked and stabbed a whole bunch. And there's vague wording, if I remember correctly. Jon Snow felt stab after stab after stab, and he laid there on the ground as everything faded to black. And it was that same George R. R. Martin way that he had described a bunch of other scenes where everything had gone wrong and then later turned out to be okay, that when I read the book, I remember thinking clearly, like, yeah, whatever. I ain't buying it a 12th time, George R. R. Martin. He's, because they also did that with the Onion Knight. They said the Onion Knight's head was mounted on a pike outside of this castle, or actually mounted on the wall tarred and on the wall in this castle. And then, later you find out that they got a substitute head and they lied and said that the Onion Knight, was up there and so on. Like they'd done so many fake outs. And keep in mind, even in the television shows, plus also the mountain died. And then Dr. Frankenstein shows up and creates Franken Mountain.
Well, is it? We actually don't know that, I don't think, either in the book or the series. We just all assume it because I don't think it could be anything else.
Well, yeah, they all call him Sir Gregor, and they're like, he doesn't talk anymore. I mean, I think it's fairly clear that that's what it is in both the book and the show. But there's some ambiguity to it in the book.
They don't call him Sir Gregor in the show.
What do they call him?
They called him the Sir Strong.
Oh, that's right. They give him a new fancy name.
But isn't that the same as the book? I think he was called Strong in the book too.
Yeah,
anyway.
No. You're right.
All right, here you go. You want to hear it?
Yes.
John fell to his knees. He found the dagger's hilt and wrenched it free. In the cold night air, the wound was smoking. Ghost, he whispered. Pain washed over him. Stick them with the pointy end. When the third dagger took him between the shoulder blades, he gave a grunt and fell face first in the snow. He never felt the fourth knife, only the cold.
See, that is very, very soft. 3 stabs, and he passes out. Who knows what comes next?
Well, and in the TV show, several stabs, he falls down, blood starts coming out. We never see him die.
We see I asked Brant about this, and he says, I don't believe anyone's dead on Game of Thrones until I see them dead. And I was like, well, what did you think of that? And he says, I saw you. He looks pretty dead to me. By the way, we're looking at a meme now that says R.I.P. JKBRB.
Okay. But here's the thing. You can make, and let's not make it, okay? You can make an argument that ending scene in the TV series leaves it in a question mark.
I don't think it does. I think it very...
Well, no, I'm saying let's skip that, though. Let's just skip right past that argument, because you can make it, and maybe you will, maybe you won't. It doesn't matter, because Benioff and Weiss have said he's dead.
Yes.
In the post-show interview, they're like, now that Jon Snow has been killed.
Okay, which again, let me back things up. In that same post-show interview, they also say, you know what's great about Sansa and Reek is that they've shown that their persevering spirit lives on no matter what. And they're saying that as it shows footage of them committing suicide off
They're not committing suicide. They're just jumping to an escape. I never took that as a suicide.
What are you talking about?
No, Sansa doesn't want to die.
It's so clearly portrayed as though they know that whatever awaits them is worse than death, so they just jump off. They're two defeated, broken characters that commit suicide.
Not at all.
What? Okay, from a lower. Okay,
that kind of does. That's just taking us off the point, right?
Okay, but and again,
because them saying that about Sansa and Theon doesn't change what they said about Jon Snow being dead.
No, okay.
Dead. And there's an Entertainment Weekly article where Kit Harington says, "Oh no, all that stuff you read about my contract, I'm pissed about that. It's not accurate, and I am not going to be back next season."
Oh shit.
That's where I'm going with all this. Is George R. R. Martin wrote it that way. George R. R. Martin in interviews said, "Oh, so you think he's dead, do you?" Played all coy and has left that door wide open. Benioff and Weiss seem to be going out of their way to assure us that Snow is dead, which I still think means he's coming back as a White Walker or something in season 7.
I mean, but I don't see any way for them to pull that off where we don't hate them for a cartoonish flip-flop, right?
That's why we're not hired to write the show.
So despite everything you said, it sounds like you and I are on the same page.
Yes, it's absolutely true. That's why I wanted to let's not have that side argument or that side argument.
And keep in mind also that in the book it was just kind of a soft writing that he got stabbed a couple times and fade to black. Where I'm like, code for he wakes up and is like, whoa, they really don't like me, do they?
At the end, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, stabbed in the back, but they didn't say he's dead.
Right, and then meanwhile in the TV version, here's what I think it's significant that all of a sudden, the Red Woman shows up. Melisandre shows up seconds before this happens in the movie. Also, keep in mind,
and she's there in the book too. She just never left.
Yeah, but and plus she's got a giant clitoral hard-on for King's blood, right? And so she's like, oh, King's blood.
Well, and Jon Snow's just a bastard of Ned Stark. There's no King's blood there.
Well, okay, depending on which theory you believe, but right? even if it's just Ned Stark's blood, that's good enough. I do believe.
No, he's not a king. It would not be good enough. Jon would have to be a Targaryen, I think.
But I thought in the book they were looking for Arya for that very reason. Wasn't that reason? Or Sansa? They were looking at Sansa for that sweet, tasty king's blood.
Were they?
I may be wrong. Because like Ned Stark would have been king. It would have been a kingdom, but it's the 7 kingdoms. Sub kings apparently count as king's blood. Apparently. Plus also
not sure about that one.
Well, but I mean, Stannis' daughter's not a king, but and
but
neither
she is
Stannis.
The heir to a king.
Well, okay, but they took Robb Stark was a king as far as their thing was, right?
Right, but Jon's not Robb's son or daughter.
Okay. Same blood runs through those two. If Robb Stark's blood counts,
don't count. Uncles and aunts don't count.
Jeez. All right, fine.
Also, not a true king. If you're Melisandre.
Also, they're all dead. Okay, so but here's the thing. Melisandre shows up. And all of a sudden, that's the X factor where it's like, keep in mind, she said she didn't say, I saw you winning. She says, I saw Bolton's banners burning. You will have your victory.
I didn't catch that. Good.
Right?
She's a lawyer.
She is, right? So she said, I saw Bolton's banners burning. And then she shows up just before Jon Snow gets stabbed. You're telling me she can't do some red fire magic and Jon's up and be like,
I saw Bolton's
let's take
burning.
Winterfell.
I saw me reviving Jon Snow from being dead in season 7.
But I forgot to mention that part.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Okay, so she's back there. Let's say we all desperately want Jon Snow to be alive. And a lot of things in this don't make sense if he's not alive. For one, Jon Snow is one of the original 5 characters that Martin talked about when he first pitched the book as a trilogy. So he is always, not that he couldn't change his mind about this, but he has always considered Jon to be a central character. I don't think you build Jon Snow up as much as you do, and just to have him like, well, now he's dead, and that's the end of it, right? Like, there's got to be more to it than that. But if Kit Harington isn't in next season, that's a lot of toying around waiting to figure out what happened, right?
Well, but keep in mind, it could be a similar situation to what we've already experienced with the books, where what was supposed to be the fourth book got split into 2 books, one of which takes place in Westeros, one of which takes place, in Marine and so on. It could
That's not the way. The TV show is never going to do that.
Well, but there's a number of characters. There's entire characters and arc line and storylines that we didn't see at all this go round.
They just skipped them though. I mean, they've actually said like, oh, we're not going to split the stories because it wouldn't make sense.
Okay,
on a
wait.
TV show.
So you're saying that we're just done with Bran? Bran didn't show up all season long, and
the idea is that Bran is going to be like, well, and he was wandering around in the wilderness that whole time, right?
Right.
They'll say he was doing things, but they're not going to go back and show him.
that's what I'm getting at. Is that Bran? Bran will be bigger next season. We'll have other stories or whatever, and then when Kit Harington shows up in season 7, he will have kept his word and say, well, I told you I wouldn't be in that season.
Okay, but I get that. That all makes that's easy, right? Oh, he was off doing something else. But how does Lady Melisandre? How does she do that? How does she make that happen? Does she revive him and then send him off into the wilderness? Does she hide his body and then revive him later? What does she do in the meantime, or does she sneak off with him? Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe
Well, I mean, to be honest, we've already seen the blueprint for this with the whole Lady Stoneheart thing, right? Where it's like we've seen
Well,
characters.
no, we haven't. We haven't seen anything. I don't know what you're talking about because that's not a character in the show.
All right.
I do think though that what is Lady Melisandre? She's fire. She represents the fire god. What is the Night's King? He's ice. Like Jon Snow has got to be raised to fight the Night's King, especially because the Night's King looked at Jon Snow and was like, "Oh, you got not only got Longclaw, which works against me, but there's something else about you." Like he gave him a look.
Yeah. The significant look, the eyebrow raise as he toasts him with his double scotch.
Yeah. Well, I think he would use ice wine probably, but
Probably. But man, I go back and forth because they so clearly showed Jon Snow is dead. Let me get Bryce to chime in as somebody who hasn't read the books. Does all of this sound like nonsense talk? Is it obvious that Jon Snow's dead?
It seems
Wishful thinking.
It seems like what they would want to do, right? Is like if they wanted to tell you that Jon Snow was dead, they would make the Ice King give him that significant look. They would build up the Valyrian steel, and then turn it around at the last minute. It's like, oh, actually, he's dead, so it's going to be someone else. Similarly to Sansa and Reek, they show like minutes before they jump, they show that assassin girl
falling from the same height,
and
her head explodes, and it's not even the same height. It may be lower.
It looks
and then
lower.
They jump from the same height, and they're going to survive.
Right. Like, I mean, maybe you can make the argument that, oh, well, maybe they'll land on their feet or something. But
I was looking at it like, man, they're gonna have broken ankles.
Here's what I say. I say it is so obviously clear that Sansa and Reek could survive, and also so obviously clear that Jon Snow died, that it makes me want to flip it. And I want to believe that Jon Snow will live and that Sansa and Reek really are dead.
But the other thing is that Sansa is one of those 5 characters that I talked about earlier, along with Arya, Daenerys, and Tyrion.
Speaking of which, you know what? Let's press pause.
Though, right? That's what George R. R. Martin thought in the 90s. He may have changed everything since then.
Let's go to Arya, since you mentioned Arya. It was interesting because in the books, they're presenting stuff out of order. By the way, just objectively, that was awesome watching her get her revenge on Sir Meryn.
3 twists in one scene, dude.
I totally called it though. The moment there was one that didn't yelp. That was great.
I thought it was just going to be her behind the hair, and then as soon as she flipped her hair back, I'm like, oh, she's still a face. I was still convinced it was her.
Yeah. Well, and then of course, and then the way they handled it, with Jake and Hagar and the committing, only life could pay for life and so on and all that stuff. Again, spoiler alert. There's some books. In the books, the whole going blind seems to be, and tell me if I'm remembering this correctly, Tom, that it was just sort of like the next step. Like she was clearly obsessed with getting her revenge, and they caught her. I don't know if it was killing someone or for her own personal pleasure or checking stuff out, but they were like, hey, you're on a path here, and if you're serious about going on the path, you need to drink this. And she says, well, is it going to kill me? What's it going to do? And they're like, I don't know. Are you on the path or not? And she's like, okay, I choose to do this. And then she woke up blind the next day. And then, it was a weird kind of, downbeat.
Yeah, you're even adding more to the story than there was. Basically, they're like, hey, part of your training is being blind. And she was like, oh, that sucks.
Well, no, but they didn't say blind. Like she just drank it not knowing what it was.
Yeah, but there was no, like,
blind.
she didn't kill anything. It wasn't punishment. It was just part of her training.
That's what I'm saying. And then, we join her story again, like months and months later when she's learning, all the things you can see when you don't have your eyes to interrupt you. Whereas, like, they acted like it was a punishment in the TV show, which is a little bit different.
Yeah, and it was Ralph the Sweetling that she got in the book, not Sir Marin Trant, but that kind of doesn't matter. I mean, honestly, the Arya story is like, okay, good, great. We're on the path, seeing where Arya's go. Can't wait to see what happens next because I don't know.
Yep.
You've got Sam finally taken off for the Citadel. That's great.
Yep.
Love that. Daenerys, meeting up with the whole Dothraki tribe. Great. That's what I was waiting for. Okay. That's going to be an interesting scene next season. I'm pretty sure. But she's going to have Drogon at her back. She's probably going to get the Dothraki back.
Speaking of which, I was happy to see Drogon, like, and again, this is straight like it happened in the books. Drogon, in that moment, scooped her up and saved her and went off. And you're tempted to think, oh, she's just, awesome with dragons now. But it's clear that that's not the case. And I'm glad that I'm glad that they represented it as such in the show.
Cersei walked through the city naked. Great.
Back. Pause.
What?
There ain't no way that's Lena Headey's body.
Whatever, dude.
Hold on.
Who cares? Why did you bring that up?
That's fine for you to say, but some of us may have been waiting for this for years and may have been a little disappointed to see what's clearly not Lena Headey on there.
This isn't real life.
God damn it.
Yeah, so, but
I'll tell you what's not real life is having 3 babies and looking like that. That's not real life.
I guess that rather than talk about her body, the only part of this show that really even affected me was Jaime and Myrcella. Besides the Jon Snow, like the Jon Snow thing dominated this show and has dominated our conversation. What did you think about that?
Loved it. Absolutely loved it, because that was one of the great triumphs of the books. Was my favorite thing is taking somebody who was so patently, unapologetically, unquestionably evil in book 1 and somehow making him remotely sympathetic and honorable by the later books. And we saw that. And the fact that we saw him vulnerable and that we saw him confess something. And it's only because we as viewers have been through this bizarre rules are different in different countries kind of situation where we can wrap our minds around like, well, maybe it's okay that brother and sister are making babies or whatever and outside of weddings. And then to see it's as though he confessed a great secret to the people he cares the most. And in that moment, Jaime Lannister becomes, a freaking sympathetic character. And I never would have believed I would have seen that. And I believed it. And then you see that trickle of blood, and it just was like, of course. It just broke my heart, slayed me, and it was insane.
Yeah. And then it goes back, to the shore, and it's like the trickle of blood is also coming out of Illyrio's nose. But, we've been set up. Like, we had the whole scene in the prison with Bronn to know, oh, well, she's got the antidote, though. And, of course, she has it right around her neck. Here's the thing. I and you have put ourselves in a cage watching this entire series to this point.
Sure.
So and the reason that the people who haven't read the books get so upset when we talk about the books is partly because maybe there's things in the books they don't want to get spoiled on because they want to go back and read those and enjoy them, but also because we're not talking about the show. We never speculate about what's happening next because we think we have a really good idea what's happening next. This is the very first time for certain that we cannot say what is going to happen next at all.
I mean,
one of the previewed chapters was covered in this episode. The other has to do with Sansa being in the river in River Run, which is not happening. If the next book comes out between now and season 6, will you read it?
Oh, dude, I can't not read it. I'm on the Game of Thrones train. It's like whatever it is there
I almost wish not to. I'm not going to say for you particularly, but I almost want to have a season of conversations where we can speculate, where we can wonder, where we could talk about what's going to happen next without that cage around.
I mean, sure, I wish for that too, but if we're wishing, we would also have to wish for a world where all of our friends know the story and have the ability to not let fly any little tidbits that start our brain running in speculation mode.
But that's true already. Of stuff. That's always true.
Well, no, not anymore, because now all of our friends are just as ignorant as we are, right?
No, I'm just saying, there's lots of people who haven't read the books.
Except for my friend George. We were hanging out the other day. He gave me a coy look when I was talking about Jon Snow's death.
So you think he's dead, do you? And he pulled his suspenders. Where's Ant-Man?
Let's go on a pub crawl. Who do you like in the NFL? I'm George R.R. Martin.
I'm tantalized by that because it feels really different and really good to finally have theories, like honest to good, solid theories.
Do you know what? And it just occurs to me that this is new, maybe novel territory for you, but what you're experiencing right now, what we are experiencing, is the experience that I have as a magician. There's a lot of magicians I have seen where people will say, "Oh my God, how did he do that?" And because I know how it was done, I'll say, "Oh, he did it very well, didn't he?" And I know to put up the shield and not take away their wonder and do the little dance, right? But then I go see David Copperfield, and I'm genuinely freaking fooled. I am in uncharted waters, and I'm like, I have no idea how this is possible. And then those same kind of people say, like, "Well, how do you think he did that?" And I'm like, and now we're both on the same page, and I'm like, man, it might be a double, or maybe at this point, because you notice the things that all of a sudden we could talk the same language, because I don't know, I feel fair speculating, right? And now we are finally at that point of this magic trick where you and I are able to speculate wildly about where this is headed.
Yeah. No, it's a good analogy, and I don't know, we probably won't get the choice, is my guess. I don't think the book's going to come out before next season.
I mean, yeah, it is a bit of a moot point.
All right, let's finish up with The Shield, episode 3 of season 6, as I called it earlier, the Gardaki episode called Back to One. So Vic sort of realizes what's going down. He's still chasing around. He doesn't want to come back, even though he's been let off the hook, because he wants to get Guardo. Meanwhile, Shane's trying to talk him out of it because Shane knows that Guardo's not the guy responsible for the death of Lem. And Gardaki, just because he doesn't have a personal day because he called in sick a bunch, ends up getting roped into helping Wag and Billingsley's case. And suddenly we get to see Gardaki off the hook, right? This guy's competent. He's good. He just kind of goes about his business, and he makes Billingsley and even Wagenbach better. And you get that nice side story of Billingsley like always sandbagging it, but kind of pointing out all of Wagenbach's faults. And Gardaki just extra looks like the best cop ever next to those two.
Yeah, so, and I apologize that I didn't watch this episode because I had, given the choice, I chose to watch Orange is the New Black. But like, after diving into it, given the electricity of and I can't believe this is the second to last season. Like, I want, like, everything that happens from here on out, to me, is the final sprint of this show. So it's like, what is the one most intense aspect of this episode that you took away from it?
Well, obviously the most intense scene is when they've got Guardo strung up, and Vic is, threatening him, and Shane's like, he doesn't know anything, let him go. Shane's being the level-headed one, mostly because Shane knows the real jig, and then Vic just kills him. Just out shoots him in the head.
Now,
and now suddenly they're like, well, we just killed somebody.
Does Vic?
So we have to dispose of that.
Does Vic? I guess not in this episode. Vic just assumes he, took care of the problem. Justice has now been served.
Vic is not certain he took care of the problem, is the impression I got. The impression I got is that he still doesn't know for sure. He doesn't think Wardo actually killed because he knows about the alibi. He knows Wardo wasn't around, but he thinks he ordered it. So he's part of him is ready to keep looking and keeps to find out who actually threw the grenade itself. So we know he's not done yet. But he feels like Wardo deserved to be shot anyway.
Yeah. I don't know what to say because I haven't watched this episode and I don't want to ruin anything.
Also, Dutch finds himself getting jealous of, is it Tina? Is that the young Hispanic woman who's a cop?
No,
who's starting to look a little more who's starting to look a little more professional, and she gets saved. Wait, no, Gardaki saves somebody with a tackle, and she kind of is like, well, hey, Gardaki, that's a pretty good tackle. And then Wagonbach's like, wait, hold on. So he starts, putting the pimp lessons into place again, and dragging her down by giving her compliments at the same time.
Dude, okay, this will be the last time that I don't watch The Shield because I feel bad. I feel like you got to go to a campfire and I didn't because I didn't have time.
It's that, but I also know that you're struggling with I didn't refresh my memory, so did this happen in this episode?
Yeah,
but you don't want to
bit.
ask because then if it didn't, you've given something away.
Regardless, dude, again, glad you're in the funnel. It only speeds up from here. It's all the last stretch.
It's all downhill from here.
That's right.
In a good way.
In the best way.
In the best way possible. Well, that is it for Spoilerin time, folks. It's all downhill for here as well. Go support us, patreon.com/Cordkillers, if you have the inclination and the means, and we'll see you next time.
Love you.
Kisses.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.